A Master's Tale, number 10. In the previous talk, I was talking about scenes and fetishes and subs. And I started to talk about negotiation, which is something that's put really at the beginning of any conversation between BDSM players, between subs and tops. When on my media, in my case Recon site, I lay out a kind of menu, and I state what could happen and what I'm prepared to activate. I don't usually say what I'm not going to do. It's not a sin of omission, but it says this is what's going to happen here. Then I'm contacted, and if I haven't seen a chap before, however experienced he may or may not be, many people say they are, and as there are no quantitative ways of actually deciding where someone is, there have been some studies that say, oh, this chap's a B, and this one's an A, and that one's a Z, and so forth. But it's actually very imprecise. I have someone in for an initial scene, which, after all, I would have negotiated with them, which usually would have a sexual component to it. In fact, unless there is some other reason for doing this, I usually select people that I'm sexually attracted to. After all, this is fun. I'm not a public institution. And it will be items. There will be bondage. There will be a dog training. There will be, and let's go into acronyms, TT, CBT, CP. There are many initials in BDSM, as there are in any specialist human activity. TT is tit torture. Sounds more graphic than it actually is. It can be as graphic as being gently stroked with a feather, or something a lot more graphic and a lot more painful. But that depends upon the individual. CP is a whole area of erotic pain, from almost a hard word, dismissive, humiliating thing, and humiliation is part of the gradient. For some people, it is the only thing that really moves them, to a severe caning with an actual cane. And that, for a certain type of submissive, is extremely important. The highest point of their month or year. Don't underestimate what impact play has on people's lives. It's not something they do every week, but it's often a lot more than one would ever gather. So a lot of different activities there, from, as I mentioned in the first, and I think number 8, about restraint, and now we're on to what physically can happen. There are many other activities such as water sports, which of course involves urine, and there are things like dirty arts, which are not actually my line of country. In fact, I don't like bad smells particularly. But for some people, it's enormously erotic. And for another group of submissives, None of what we discuss here would be what turns them on. You may have seen American movies where gimps are involved. It's usually men, but not always. You know, ladies do this too, where they're covered literally from head to foot in rubber, immobilized and in the dark. If any of you remember the film Altered States, think about what that does. That puts the submissive, in this particular case, the man in the box, in a completely different realm and a completely different place. Yet, it's an episode, it's a scene. He or she comes out of it and returns to normal life, renewed, refreshed, aroused, and fulfilled.